guys, what's up and welcome to another episode of the Goodcast Show. Today we have a repeat guest, a guest that you guys love. I think his past 2 interviews on this channel has done hundreds of thousands, if not 1 million views already. And he's a very controversial man. You may know him from the clip that you guys loved, him proclaiming, Borneo is not a Malay land. Now, he's back today. And by the way, I just want to say on this podcast, we are tied at the most number of guest appearances, and that is between Prof. Tajuddin and my guest. So let's see to the end of the year who will win the race to be the most, who will record the most appearances on the podcast. We'll see. So please welcome my guest, Dato Joe Samad. How are you, Dato?
I'm fine, thank you, Vinod. Thank you very much for inviting me back to the show.
Yes.
I didn't know I'm in a race with Prof. Tajuddin.
I've just made the
friend.
race. So today there's no book. It's just you and me. It's fun conversation. I've been looking forward to this. I always enjoy talking to you, Dato. So, but let's start to get to know you as a person, Dato. I think we've always talked about your books, but who are you? We know that you were part of a think tank. We know that you've been in the corporate world, GLCs and all that. But my question is, what made you shift your focus onto being the man who champions the issues or reforms that you like to see done in Sabah?
Well, I've always been politically conscious. I have not commented publicly because I was in the corporate world working with GLCs, and by rule, you cannot comment publicly. I mean, I respect that. But when I left, I started writing and discovered I had knack for writing. So I use my writing as a way to express my opinion about the worldview of mine.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's how it started.
And how long have you been doing this? How long have you been focused on the issues?
I started writing in 2017.
Okay.
Yeah. So I had a column in Daily Express. I had Malaysia Today. Not Malaysia Today. Sorry. One of the my memory.
Malaysian Insight, is it?
Malaysian Insight.
Insight,
yeah.
Yeah.
So, actually, Jabar was the first one who was the editor, gave me a chance to express myself, and I went well. And then I wrote for Daily Express, Kota Kinabalu, and move on to FMT, Free Malaysia Today. Yeah.
So perfect. You're
so
a writer.
I enjoyed writing, and then I decided to put all my articles into one book, which is The Unequal Partners, of course. And then later on, I wrote a book from scratch, the
Social Contract, which we
from
enjoyed.
the Borneo perspective.
Loved it.
Perspective, yeah. So I'm working on my 3rd book now.
By the way, that book is currently, if I'm not mistaken, it's I voted for it recently. It's on the popular, I think they are having a sort of, which is the most favorite book of 2024, 25 or something, and your book is there. So guys, head on to popular and vote for Dato Joe's book, The Social Contract.
Yes, I'm proud because I didn't expect it. I mean, my first book was nominated for the best nonfiction in 2024, and then 2025 nomination is my second book. So I'm very proud of the success because I don't think many people read some serious stuff like this, but apparently I'm wrong.
You're wrong, Dato. It's a very fun book. I've read it. I loved it. So now, Dato, since you're here, whenever you're here, it's the only time I have the chance to talk about Borneo, Sabah. So let's start with that.
Yes.
All right? So
About time.
So now, in 2023, this is I must get this correctly. In 2023, the Chief Minister, Dato Sri Panglima Haji Noor, said that Sabah's record revenue of 7 billion, right? And they were among the top 6 states contributing to Malaysia's GDP. This is in 2023. Now, Sabah contributed 5.5% of the nation's GDP in that year. 11.34 billion they recorded in investments, the 7th highest in Malaysia. 13.3% garnered from the manufacturing sector. Now, together with Selangor, KL, Johor, Sarawak, and Penang, they contribute 73% to the national economy. Fantastic stats. However, on the flip side, in 2023, Sabah had the highest poverty level in Malaysia with an absolute poverty rate of 19.5%, followed by Kelantan 12.4% and Sarawak at 9%. It's the only state in the 6 highest contributors to have double digits in poverty levels, right? Now, just for some perspective here, the national poverty rate is 6.2%. So that's a huge contrast in terms of GDP growth as well, and then put against the whole poverty levels. So in your opinion, being somebody who's in the GLCs, you've been active in these issues, why is it that Sabah's economic success is not translating into the prosperity of its people?
Very good question. First of all, I'd like to say I'm not a political commentator, but I'm more of a political observer.
Okay.
All right. So I'm not going to not going to talk in terms of political expertise.
Okay.
Right? So just as an observer, you rightly pointed it out. I mean, this poverty level has been with us since Malaysia was formed, 1963. So the good question is always why, after 61 years of Malaysia, we're still with the highest rate of poverty. Nobody seems to answer that question directly. Statistics is statistics, and you can play around with it and shout from the top of your tower that your growth rate is this. You attracted a lot of investments, foreign investments to the country or the state rather. But when it's translated into real economic trickle-down effect to the lowest people in the rural areas and all that, it's not really impacted that situation in the sense that their standard of living has increased on par with West Malaysians living here. So Peninsular Malaysians living here. Sometimes West Malaysian is a bit offensive to people. So
call us Malayans.
Malayans. Thank you. So people don't read signs that I read. For example, if you read the 12 Malaysia plan, it stated it clearly what is the reason why we're so far behind. But people don't read that. Okay, I read, and it's in my book, Social Contract. I summarized it. Why are we behind? We're behind everything. Basically infrastructure. So when you talk about infrastructure, people talk it in general terms. What does it mean? It means poor lack of hospitals, education facilities crumbling down, road infrastructure are so bad that people who are living off the land cannot bring the goods to the tamu, for example, to sell the goods, right? They have to pay high fees to hire a car to bring, say, a bunch of bananas to sell in the weekly tamu. But as they earn their living off the land, they need that transportation and all that to earn a living. And example for hospitals, the nearest hospital may be 300 kilometers away, right? And then you have to wait for a doctor. Waiting for a doctor online in hospitals can be an arduous wait because it can take 3 days, 4 days to get an appointment to see the doctor. And then when they dispense medicine or whatever, you have to go back to the kampong again and for the next visit a month later, all right, where the doctor will re-examine you again. So that will cost them again twice for one simple sickness, for example. So those are kind of things, the challenges that we face in Sabah and all that. And if you translate that statistics you mentioned earlier, why is that a lot of Peninsula young people, Sabah young people are living and working in Peninsula Malaysia, in Johor Bahru and Selangor and all that. I mean, some people say it's 300,000 youth are working, Sabah youth are working in Peninsula Malaysia, and I believe it's higher than that, closer to 500,000 or not. So the younger generation of Malaysians are moving to KL in search of jobs, all right? So if it's translated in foreign direct investment and the economic statistics that you mentioned, which is very, very positive, why is that a lot of the young people are leaving Sabah to find jobs elsewhere, all right? So that's why I don't read so much into the statistics. I read into the real story of the current economic situation. We don't have enough jobs, basically, in Sabah. We're not creating enough jobs. So if you talk about industrialization today, we must remember that the kind of jobs that we create now today requires less labor, less people. Okay, it's all
AI,
digitized
robotics.
or electronics or all that, which needs a few people to man. So there's no factory jobs or those hard labor jobs that can earn some money for the youth in Sabah, right? So they're forced to come to Peninsula Malaysia to find that kind of jobs. I mean, yesterday I was in a nasi lemak stall, and then that guy is from Sabah, helping the stall. So why is he in Peninsula Malaysia helping this guy selling nasi lemak? And he has got 2-3 jobs here. So definitely he came from Tawau to earn a living here, all right, which he can't find in Sabah. Yeah. In conclusion, I don't read so much of the statistics. I like to see it translated into the wealth of the state and into jobs.
But interestingly enough, I mean, in 2021, the GRS government had introduced a blueprint, Sabah, Maju, Jaya, as a plan to sort of transform the state. Their focus was creating jobs and enhancing infrastructure and boosting Sabah's agricultural and industrial sectors. After 4 years, in your opinion, how has this plan panned out?
Yeah, I like to be frank about this Sabah Maju Jaya.
Please,
please. Because this signs is everywhere now. It's like the Hollywood sign in Los Angeles. That you can see it from far. The GRS government has spent so much money on this signage everywhere. If you go to Sabah now, you can see it from the hills. You can see it from every corner. Sabah Maju Jaya. Unfortunately, because of the situation we are in, poverty and being backward in infrastructure, potholes and all that, they call it moonraker holes, sarcastically and all that. And you see these signages being, people questioning why spend money on signages which carries no meaning. I mean, it should be meaningful because it's the state motto, it's on the state crest, but you put it everywhere, it cheapens the whatever the wordings are, right? But people use it in a sarcastic way now. So you greet each other now, Sabah Maju Jaya. Anything, I have no water yesterday, Sabah Maju Jaya. I have no electricity yesterday, Sabah Maju Jaya. So it's not, it's not disrespect, but I think it's more frustration than anything else. I mean, just before I left last week, a few days ago, somebody was killed, a motorcyclist was killed on the highway, flyover, because he hit a pothole.
Yes, I've heard about it.
Yeah, you read about it. Okay, this is the kind of station. And when that happens, it's Sabah Maju Jaya again, right? Yeah.
It's like I guess it's like we used to use the term Malaysia boleh for everything last time. So I guess you have
something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Now, of course, before I started interviewing people from Borneo, I think you were the first. I did not have much of in-depth understanding of Sabahan politics. Of course, to speak to you, I had to do my research and learn. But my God, Sabah is its own animal in terms of politics. You guys, I mean, it's so volatile. And I think there was one UMS professor who said Sabah politics is more about personal ambition than political ideology. So I just want to ask you, Dato', as a voter, with all these changes, how do you keep up with politics in Sabah?
You can't really keep up when it comes to Sabah politics. I mean, the statistic shows we have 16 chief ministers since 1963, whereas Sarawak, which is more stable, have 5 or 6 rather. So that shows you the vitality of the turnaround of chief minister. But Sabah's politics has always been interesting. It's cloak and dagger stuff, and the recent one, as you know, the mining issue. Okay, it's a very bad timing because it's just before the state election which is due this year. So a lot of pundits have or political experts have put forward, what are the big issues of this coming election and all that. So I have different view from them because I'm talking to people on the ground, So basically, if you look at Sabah politics, we had 2 chief ministers twice, 1985, Pyrin versus Mustafa, and then the recent one, 2018, Musa versus Shafi.
Okay,
right?
Yes.
And both landed in court cases. In fact, the first one, Mustafa, and Pyrin became a famous Lat cartoon. I don't know whether you saw that cartoon, right? With two motorcad passing each other.
Okay.
So that was one of the most significant cartoon to me to display what actually is going on in Sabah, right? Even with the GRS government and this turmoil and all that, and how UMNO Bung Mokhtar pulled out of this coalition and all that, and then jump over from UMNO to GRS, and so there's so many things going on that is very confusing for the outsiders and even myself. How does this situation pan out later?
Yeah.
So GRS is actually a coalition of several parties, but a lot of them, half of them or more than half of them, do not have seats. Okay, so normally coalition, you should at least one or two seats to say, you're part of the coalition. But in GRS case, a lot of the parties don't have seats. So this coming election will be interesting because those who don't have seats will demand for seats. All right. So it'll be very interesting how all this pan out. So a lot of people that I talk to not interested in casting the vote this time because they say, all right, if I cast the vote, it's the same people coming back again. I can see that. The people that we have voted for before have not performed, and the mining issue has blown out. It shows again corruption, in the state. Some of GRS ministers saying, "Oh, it's normal, because they need political funding, and this is one way." But a lot of people say it's just pure bribes, and it's not something that Sabahans are proud of, because every time we do something like that, you get chastised by Peninsular Malaysia and say, look at you guys, you criticize about us, but look at you guys, you're the same, even worse.
I don't know about the even worse considering the past, but okay. But I'm just curious, as a voter here on this side, when I see things like, for example, like now the biggest shift is happening in the form of Tengku Zafrul shifting from UMNO to PKR. And I love the way it's happening because there was a news article, I think yesterday, day before, where he said he would like to take a break first. It seems like politics has become a change in companies. Like, okay, I work for this company, then I take a bit of I expense all my leave, then I go to the next company, right? And it sort of fills you with a sense of, man, can I really trust them? I mean, there have been surveys globally where now they have found that people trust the post of a politician is the least trusted profession in the world. So as a Sabahan, how does this volatility affect your psyche as a voter? Do you even bother anymore?
Well, first of all, we don't actually go into depth about the Peninsular Malaysian politics, but I do follow Tengku Zafrul. Am I right to say that he's never been elected? He's always been appointed as senator.
Appointed.
Right,
yeah.
So he's never been elected. And
was he an MP? No.
No, I think
he was appointed. Yeah,
as senator.
Yeah.
So he's occupied the post, and he's still a senator, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. So you have an unelected person, and you bother so much about which party he's jumping into and all that. So I think it's just a waste of time talking about it. It's just like this minister of religion, right?
Okay.
He's a senator, but he nearly blew up Malaysia with all these new restrictions on interfaith relations, right?
Yeah.
And he's a senator. That's why I wrote in some of my column, why don't you stand for election and see if we will agree with you or not, right? I mean, if you're a senator appointed in the Prime Minister's department, and then you come out with all these rules and regulation, who you're coming out with for, right? Is it for yourself or for the rakyat? So I think the best way is always to stand for election and be tested.
Let the people decide.
Let the people decide. Yeah.
Okay. Interestingly enough, we always talk about this. I think I've always spoken to you as well. Previously, I talked to you about what's the difference between Sarawak and Sabah. Sarawak has this, even after our discussion, the last discussion now, like we were talking just now, they want to start their own airline. They're so bold and, they're stomping chests against Malaya and all that, right? But Parti Gagasan Rakyat Sabah President, Dato Sri Haji Noor, said that Sabah cannot yet follow in Sarawak's footsteps of forming a coalition with only local parties. They still feel that collaboration with the allies on this side is important and needed. Why is it that in Sabah, they can't do what Sarawak has done, by form a coalition of their own parties, but they have to still work with us?
That's a very good question. I think you have to go back a lot more in history. Sabah has never been united in the first place. Okay, if you read the history of Borneo history, and same with Sarawak, but somehow Sarawak managed to get their act together and fight for a common purpose. Sabah has been so much influenced by Peninsular Malaysian politics, in particular UMNO, who came in and they just took over the British role as divide and rule. I mean, it's the same thing that's happening today. Divide and rule, and it's very difficult to pinpoint, why Sabahans are not united in terms of political will and all that, and why it's always currently buffeted by the winds of Peninsular Malaysia politics and all that. So it's a long discussion, and people all have different opinions, but the history of Sabah politics is like that. When we had interference from the federal people, federal politicians, and federal individuals like Syed Kechik, for example, is another part of history that actually ruled Sabah during Tun Mustafa's time. I think it's a new book coming out on him. People don't know about the history and all that. So there was always that the background where some West Malaysian, Peninsular Malaysian have influenced Sabah politics from day one, So there's no straight answer to that, but if you talk about last 13 years or before that, we had the rotation of chief minister. Okay, that was designed by Mahathir, where he decided, for this period of election, that would have a rotation of chief minister of 2 years term, and he implemented that. My question is, why is not implemented in other states of Peninsular Malaysia? Why only Sabah become an experiment, became a guinea pig? And similarly, if you go look back further, the Blue IC issue, I don't know whether you understand that, but that was a part of Sabah history also. When we had a Royal Commission inquiry that came out and confirmed that Blue ICs were issued to people who are not eligible for that part. So that changed the whole demographics, and that changed the whole situation, political scenario also. And these people today who issued Blue IC became voters, and they're probably the third, fourth generation of exclamation marks Malaysians. All right, so we can't really distinguish them, from the illegals and legal people of today. But if you, in my book, I've written the second biggest UMNO membership in Malaysia,
Sabah.
which people know is Sabah, and it's the biggest branches are in Senakan area or Tawau area or whatever, right? Why is that? That's where the biggest number of illegals are. All right, okay. I mean, you can do further research on that.
Okay.
Right? So I mean, UMNO has been here for donkey years, yet then the second biggest branch in Malaysia today is Sabah, in such a short space of time. How come that happened? I mean, membership will grow gradually and all that, but Sabah became number two of a short period of time. As we would have taken UMNO here in Peninsular Malaysia or Johor Bahru, the second the biggest branch. So I suspect that all these the illegal Blue IC who were given the Blue IC became voters, and they automatically became UMNO members. Okay,
But I mean, the thing about Sabah, when you do the research about the news, right? There was one where I read recently, I think it was yesterday, announced that they announced an 8.8 billion energy hub in Sabah. These are all very, eye-raising news. But then just a few hours after that news came out, there was an article that came out about the potholes in Sabah that people complained they cause multiple accidents and all that kind of stuff. And also there was one party leader who said that these potholes are a direct cause to bribery and corruption as well. One of the things that they mentioned in that article is that Sabahans tend to have a very forgiving, accepting attitude. That's why these potholes never seem to go away. That's why the leaders don't seem to do anything. But my just thought about this is, why do you think that do you concur or do you agree or disagree that the developments that take place in Sabah never really match the needs of the people? And just one more point on that. When I spoke to the previous CM of Sabah, his party at that time was going to join GRS. They had a list of demands, and all the demands didn't really have a direct. It did not address the needs of the people. So, do you think that in Sabah there is a divide between the rulers, its self-interest, and the people at secondary, tertiary?
Yeah, I don't think it's different from the politics in Peninsular Malaysia.
Yeah, definitely.
You have these elitist politician that garner all the top contracts and all that. I mean, you see them. You can't be blind to that in the newspaper and media. Not. I mean, our former prime minister was jailed for corruption, right? What else is there to say, right? So, but one of the issues I just read yesterday also, the excuses why this project is not finished. One is over budget, meaning what you bid for is not within the budget, and then delays about acquiring land and so on. These are just excuses, all right? Because if you really put the committee in place that has to deliver within a certain period and make sure that they are audited properly and checked and balanced properly, then I think you can move things a little bit. You can move the needle a little bit. But the problem with politics is that you don't keep or recruit or appoint the right people. You reward party voters or loyalists, all right, and they may not be necessarily the capable people to manage such projects and all that. I mean, for me, it's better, give it to professional architects or engineers and all that, and give them a set target and let them finish it, all right? And you pay them accordingly. But when you appoint a appointee who is not qualified to be in that position and all that, of course, this is what happens. And this is what's happening now, right? And Sarawak, it had a lot of capable professional people. I met them, in positions to deliver the goods, no? And we have to admire Sarawak somehow. Why they're doing better than Sabah in terms of implementing projects and so on. The Trans-Borneo Highway in Sarawak is almost completed. Yeah. Sabah is still maybe 50% completed and all that. But you're right. Sabahan have the tendency to be quite forgiving but I think it's not so much that. I think they're helpless and they also have given up.
Yeah, I think that's
right. Last election, I interviewed a lot of people and say, doesn't matter who is the government of the day. We've been complaining about roads, drains, and so on all these years, but they never seems to improve the situation. So just ask them to come and bring the makan and bring the beer and all that. They have a good time, and that's all. We just cast our vote. We don't really care who wins the election. So that's apathy coming in, which is not very good for Sabah.
Yeah. Let's move on to the next segment, Dato, which is Malaysia, and more macro level politics, right? So you've been on this podcast 3 times now, so I can assume that we are best buds, right? We are BFFs, if you will. So soon I would like to invite you to my home and have some dinner with my family. You can discuss.
Thank you very much. That's kind of you. But was that Deepavali? Is it past? Was yesterday? What was that?
Thaipusam. But I wonder, considering you're a Muslim, do I need to print out a how to deal with non-Muslim guide before you enter my home and pass it to you?
I think you should.
Because I will get on it right away.
I think that was stupidity in all sense of the word. I cannot describe it in any more better terms than that. You know?
Yeah.
You see, my take is simple. I started an article, but I just decided to leave it because everybody's hammering the same person.
Yeah.
Now, I respect Anwar Ibrahim, but this guy, the richest minister, let's talk sense lah. Okay, let's not pull wool over people's eye. Happens to be in the Prime Minister's department. Okay, so you doorsteps away from the Prime Minister's door.
Yeah.
And how Anwar replied, he says, "We let the cabinet decide." Now, Vinod, if we're in the same room and we work together, surely I would have talked to you before I presented this publicly. You know, it's going to be a really big issue, you know, a nuclear bomb. Right?
Yeah.
And but he went ahead and said that in Parliament, right? And then to make it look good, maybe the Prime Minister says, "Okay, we'll bring it to the cabinet," but it's already, the damage is already done, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes with politics, you don't know what's going on because you think, oh, maybe Anwar wants to play the Muslim card, all right, and let this thing happen, and then make himself look good and say, okay, we'll let the cabinet decide. Of course, the cabinet will consist of Sabahans, Sarawak, and so on, who will oppose these kind of things, right, for sure. So, so I just look at it as a political game, but it's very damaging to Malaysia, damaging to interracial faith and relations and all that. I think it should not have happened. No, because Malaysia is every now, okay, you wait for another few weeks, there'll be another issue.
Ham
right?
sandwiches.
So it would take us
something.
all kind of energy away from us. You know, the Malays be fighting with the Chinese be fighting with the Indians or whatever, you know. So there is always this incidents that will draw us apart somehow. And then, you know, all these people come in and say something. Unfortunately, I criticize MCA, DAP and all that. They always blame the other side, PAS or what. But when it comes to their side, they don't say anything.
Yeah.
Right? Okay? That's what people are complaining about. What I mean, you went to the opposition, you can say everything, you know. But now you're keeping quiet and going along with these things. I think it should be a no to have this kind of rules and regulation because you're trying to treat people like small children, how to behave and all that, right? Yeah. Okay. I mean, even we have difficulties bringing up our children, telling them what, you know, how to behave. What more? Human adult, you know, who have their mind of their own, who have friends who are Chinese or Indians and all that, and now have to start thinking, reflecting how to behave.
How to behave. Asking himself every question. How do I eat this?
Yeah.
Now, but on that point, again, this is, as you mentioned, you know, we just finished Thaipusam. So there was a very interesting article, 2 articles in fact, and just I want to pose a question to you. So the Federal Territories Mufti Department, JMWP, has come out urging Muslims to understand the boundaries that need to be maintained without affecting the harmony between races in Malaysia. This article was titled Thaipusam and Umat Islam di Mana Garis Pemisahnya. This was in an online portal. Cut to Sabah, in a town called Penampang. The secretary of the Sri Subramania Temple stated that Thaipusam is a celebration which is unique in Sabah as it involves not just Indians, but also Kadazans, Dusuns and the Chinese. So I ask you, Dato, what are your people across the sea doing differently? Is it the water? I mean,
I wish it's the water, as simple as that. You know. I mean, I did study that, you know. I mean, I think one of the reasons I can think of is our history is so varied, so much intermixing of different communities and population, and intermarriages does help, okay? And we keep saying that, you know, every time you go to a wedding or some occasions like this, you would meet in the same family who are Christians, who are Muslims, and all that, but they're all together, all right? There's no issues about, you know, this or that you use this fork, that plate, this plate, you know? I mean, they just say, okay, this one is the pork section, you guys don't touch this, this is the non-pork section. but we share same utensils.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
I run a B&B. Sometimes my caretaker tells me, they ask whether this place is halal. All right, so I just reply to them that I cannot guarantee it's halal, but I'm a Muslim and I practice the Muslim way. And then sometimes they just take the sand from my garden and clean the plates and all that, which I find is a bit too much, because if you don't like to come to this place and I can't assure you, you better go to another place.
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
But here, we don't make that distinction. All right. I just like somebody asked me whether I can bring dogs to my place. I say no, because I have to respect
Yeah,
the
exactly.
other people. All right. So but we live harmoniously. We don't have any issues like this.
Okay.
Right.
So now let's take a break from race and religion, although we talk about it a lot every time you're here. But let's get back to politics. Recently there have been a lot of opposition politicians who have voiced out. I think even political commentators lah. One of them is Siti Kasim, who I think you know as well. She sort of voiced out against, not against, but she was questioning PMX's decision to get involved in the rebuilding of Palestine, right? They want to build a school, a mosque, and a hospital and all that. Now, some people have said that, okay, whatever you do outside is fine, but don't forget us. Like, we have still schools that are not built, not completion and all that. Do you think they are right in saying that our policies should be more locally centric as opposed to trying to do something overseas when there are still unfinished projects here? There is still people living below the poverty line. I mean, there are issues that still need to be solved.
Yeah, I'd like to put that in a proper context because it's quite an emotional issue according to what I see, because this conflict between Palestine and Israel and all is not something that can be resolved easily. Okay, and the way I look at it is that we also, by the way, we also complain in Sabah and Sarawak, the lack of infrastructure in schools. So now, why don't you build the schools in Sabah instead of Palestine? But I think on a global stage, I think Malaysia has a good record in helping others in need and all that. To me, it's okay if you want to help them in a small way. Throw a few million to rebuild the schools and all that, and we're part of the world community, right? But I think what has happened was that the neglect of the people and communities in Malaysia that is reflected in these kind of statements, all right? And I don't blame them, right? I mean, what's the difference between Palestinian and poverty in Sabah, as we discussed earlier in the opening, right? We need schools, we need infrastructure, just like the Palestinian and so on, right? I think we have to be quite objective. We need to do our part as citizens of the world, but at the same time, we need to take care of the people in Malaysia. But the problem is the PMX or Madani government, they're not focused on elevating the situation in Sabah and Sarawak especially, all right? That's what Sabah, because we mentioned about poverty, the highest poverty level still after 61 years Malaysia, right? So I think I'm more balanced about my views on this. We should help others, but at the same time, we have to help our own people also.
Definitely.
And we must be seen to be helping people, which is not happening at the moment.
There's been rumors recently of a snap elections that's coming end of this year. It was released in an article, I think Bersatu, Azmin Ali has already talked to his party and he said, we need to prepare for snap elections. If it does happen end of this year, I just want to get your thoughts on this, Dato. How would Harapan and BN fare if a snap elections was held at the end of this year?
I think it's obvious that UMNO wants to come back and BN together with UMNO. I mean, UMNO, BN, just one people to me. They want to reclaim back the government, all right? But I think it's quite difficult with the current stance in a lot of things. I mean, in Sabah, very sensitive to religious issue and all these things, the Mufti bill coming, the recent rules and regulation governing our behavior, and all that. I mean, we are very protective of freedom of religion, and we are happy with our situation. Sabah and Sarawak, we are peaceful, loving people. But it seems to me if they continue with this kind of the destructive kind of rulings and all that, I mean, I don't think they'll come back, right? Because we'll never vote for them for the fear of Islamization. I mean, even though I'm a Muslim, but the kind of Muslim they're practicing today is different from what we are taught, in schools and so on, and that is basically to respect one another and so on. And religion is used as a weapon now, right, to divide and rule people, and it's a destructive way of managing the country. I think the sooner Bernardi government can stamp out all these flares from the religious issues, the better. All right. I mean, I just don't understand. The Constitution says clearly, religion is under state, respective rulers and so on. And why is a minister of religion, Islam, has control over all the other states, right? I mean, Sultan Selangor and the other sultans have pushed back and said, look, this is not on and so on, right? But it's obvious that in the constitution, it's clear that the sultan are the leaders of their own Islamic institutions in the state. So this is overreach by the federal government. But for Sabah and Sarawak, you must remember that the 20 points, if people understand the Saudi demand, safeguard, the first point is freedom of religion. So these leaders, our native leaders in the early days already saw this coming. That's why they demanded freedom of religion as to be point number one. Okay, and it's happening. So their prediction is way
Spot
out
on.
earlier than spoken for earlier.
I mean, since you last came on, there's been a lot of developments and a lot of issues that I think PMX has had to face publicly. I mean, even recently about a simple thing as his appearance at Thaipusam was questioned as well. Why was he there just maybe around 30 minutes? He wasn't there on the day and stuff like that. All these points were raised. Do you think it's hard for him because he has to juggle appeasing the Malay vote or being seen as a person who prioritizes that vote bank or their sensitivities versus doing things for all Malaysians? Do you think it's tough for him?
I don't think it's tough for him. I mean, if I was Prime Minister, I'll be very decisive. Of course, I'm not a Prime Minister, but I'll be very decisive in this kind of issues which is related to race relations and religion. I mean, I would just leave religion out to the heads of the various community religions, whether it's Christianity, Buddhism, and Muslim faith. I mean, they know how to deal with the interfaith relationship. I mean, occasionally I can see going well, that Ramadan they invite each other or Christmas they invite each other. That's the way to go. And remember, we have a ministry of unity, so people are questioning
what are they doing?
What they're doing. He's a Sarawakian, poor guy.
Yes,
And he's been upset by this religious minister. So there is a fear that, I mean, nobody wants to live in a Taliban government, right? No. It's tougher for moderate Muslims like us to live in this country. The Christians have a free hand; they can do what they like, but we are being coddled and
told what to do,
put in a straitjacket and say you must behave like this, must behave like, treating us like children, right? I mean, but we're adults. I mean, we know what to do, all right? And the problem with Malaysia is that they use religion and identity politics to win whatever they think they can win. But they have to realize, all right, the Malays are also divided now, okay? Not like under UMNO Barisan, when they're all very cohesive. Today it's divided, right? So each party can play this religion game, all right? But at the end of the day, who's going to win? There's only one party that's going to win, right?
Yeah.
And if
It's
they,
like, it's like all the parties are trying to out Malay one another. Yeah, who can be the bigger Malay, bigger Muslim?
exactly, right? So that's what they're doing, lah. I mean, that's what we say they're doing. But I mean, the chief minister of the day has to put a foot down and say, look, it's not on. Okay, we Malaysians, we live peacefully together. Then that's why I said Malaysia is for all Malaysians. Okay, it's not a Malay country. Sorry, I'll say it again. It's not a Malay country.
You're going to annoy a lot of people.
Yeah. It's Malaysians. Malaysians are people like you and me. Okay, and all the other ethnic races that we have in Sabah and Sarawak. You know.
I think I also want to bring this point in because we were discussing it just now as well. It's about the current discussions about the LNG. Who owns the LNG? Is it Petros or is it Petronas? Sarawak has, when I spoke to the previous chief minister, he was telling me, and I asked him, I said, why is Sarawak and Sabah now suddenly so loud as opposed to when, during the times of Mahathir? He was saying that because now there is sort of the government has sort of lifted a bit of its grip on Sarawak and stuff, so now they are more brave and bolder. The talks have broken down. Both PMX and Abang Joe cannot comment. They said until the talks resume. There's questions of which act, is it our Petroleum Act or is it the Ordinance Bill? Which one should we follow? What's your take on it, Dato?
Yeah, it's a complicated issue. I mean, it just in brief, from the federal standpoint, the petroleum businesses or whatever licensing comes under Petroleum Development Act 1974. Yeah. But going back further, we could not talk about MA 63 or oil rights and so on in the BN UMNO era, all right, because we'll be put under ISA and so on. But after the fall of BN UMNO and Mahathir started promising us 20% oil royalty, which he didn't deliver, people begin to speak up and more. And today, thank God, we have a freedom of expression and obviously a power play between the state and federal, and Sarawak is leading the way. So Sarawak have their own mineral ordinance, and Sabah also have the mineral ordinance, which has not been repealed over the years. Okay, so it still stands. Okay, aside from the legal issues and all that, I don't want to comment, but I think what we feel as people of Sabah and Sarawak, that our oil resources are being being used here in Peninsula to build Peninsula rather than having it shared between Sabah and Sarawak. And the result is, Sabah, one of the richest, is a paradox. One of the richest in oil and gas is the poorest with highest poverty. Yeah. All right, so you're rich, you're poor at the same time. So that's a paradox which most oil nations face. All right, so Sabah is no different. So Sarawak has upped the game a bit, and so we are just observers now to see what happens. But going back to 2019, Sarawak imposed the petroleum sales tax, and this matter was brought to court. Right, so I mean, it's good to understand precedents and all that, so you can understand better. So Petronas challenged them, and the matter was settled out of court, and the sales tax imposed stands. Okay, and then 1 or 2 years later, Sabah imposed that same thing and they passed in the state assembly. So now both states are now collecting sales tax, and worth a couple of billion a year, which is quite substantial, right? So this is one way that we resolve our problem. We take the matter to court. At the moment, what I see is the political negotiation going on behind closed door, and people want to know exactly what Abang Joe has agreed with PMX, okay, and nobody seems to say it clearly in press statements or any written form, except that they have agreed, and this is how it's going to pan out, right? But there are a lot of underlying currents that we know, and we can see, we can feel that it's not going to end there. All right, sooner or later, the Sarawakians will impose some kind of, I don't know, to challenge this ultimately, all right? And it could land in court, or it could land politically. If you say the snap election coming, then there are some issues which the KL folks have to navigate.
Do you think in this discussion, who has the greater bargaining power? Do you think it's Abang Joe or do you think it's PMX? Because with the post-electoral coalition system we have now, I would say Abang Joe has the bigger bargaining power, since Sabah and Sarawak have been for ages the kingmakers of Malaysia.
Yeah, I think if people follow this Malaysia Agreement 1963 issue, there's several committees set up already, and they've discussed this day in, day out. For example, in Sabah, we're still talking about the 40% revenue issue. I don't know if you quite follow that. Yeah, but that is Sabah government is following up on that, because the 40% is in the constitution, that the whatever tax collected in Sabah, I mean, I'm just summarizing it, has to be shared with the Sabah state. 40% of tax revenue collected has to be shared with the Sabah state, and 60% is donated to KL. And the Sabah Law Society has taken this up, is in court, all right? And the state government is sort of on the periphery. Perhaps they were waiting for a political solution. Okay, in Sarawak there's this oil and gas issue, right, which they're pursuing. Who has the right to the gas aggregation? I don't know what the word aggregate means. I mean,
all the lines come to one, then they collect and then they sell.
Yeah, I mean that could be it, but where is the source? The source comes from the production sharing contract.
I think that's in Bintulu, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Bintulu. Yeah. It's a bit complicated than that. No. So the thing is, what is happening is that Sabah and Sarawak are now exerting the constitutional power, I would say, all right, and political power. In the case of Sarawak, because they have the 23 seats that props up the Manadi government, all right? So oil and gas is not going to be resolved overnight, because Sarawak will continue with the demand, and rightly so, that they have rights to the minerals, right?
And then it sort of affects us a lot. I mean, on this side of the world. On the other side, it affects us.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of friends in Peninsula here. I have friends, I belong to the NGO here, G25 and so on. Of course, when you bring up this issue, they just keep mum about it, because basically you guys are enjoying
In fact, when I was reading, I was like, oh man, I wouldn't want to see this. Because
the fruits of our resources. Right?
Yeah.
So that it's not the issue here, but it's an issue in Sabah and Sarawak, where we have highest rate of poverty, poor infrastructure, and so on, as we mentioned many times. So we look at it differently. We say, when you look at the Twin Towers, one is funded by Sabah, one is funded by Sarawak, and you have many more tall buildings. Why do you need tall buildings in Malaysia to compete with the world? What does it show when people are poor? Right? People in poverty. So we see all this money that from our oil resources is going here. And remember, people should not forget, Mahathir promises 20% of royalty, okay?
During PH 1.0.
Exactly, right? Yeah. And he's still around.
He hasn't made his promise yet.
He should make good before anything happens.
Just a reminder, Ton.
If he's watching.
Yeah, he's watching, thank you, Dato, for being on the podcast. I truly had fun again. You are always welcome. There's always a seat for you on this table whenever
Thank you very
free.
much, Vinod. I enjoyed myself all the time talking to you.
Thank you so much, Dato. So, guys, that's all we have. Please share your comments. I'm sure you will. There's plenty to talk about from what Dato has shared today. And if you guys have any questions, please share. And maybe the next time he comes on, we will pose those questions to him. So, till next time, guys, take care. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dato.
See you again.
See you.